Thank you for spending another midweek moment with the Wisconsin Property Taxpayers. I'm Paul Rozeski. Today is Wednesday, April 1st, 2026. Thanks for being here, and upfront disclaimer that I am not playing the April Fool's game, not making anything up in this podcast. As you know, I find more gratification in sharing stuff that sounds so absurd that you assume someone did make it up. Since my first headline is about something cool in Wisconsin, I'm going to cut my preamble short and get right after it. So let's jump into some news together. And let's start with a slightly overdue update, but one that I hardly saw any buzz about. The beginning of March was the World Cheese Championship. And I'm considering this as something cool in Wisconsin because wait until you get a load of the results of the competition. Out of 148 categories, Wisconsin products won first place 44 times, which is more than any other state or country. And that's just first place. When you count second and third place also, we had more awards than the next 5 highest earning competitors combined. That's crazy. And it gets even better. There were 44 total categories, and in 22 of them, Wisconsin swept all 3 awards. Let me put that into context for you. That'd be like at the Olympics, one country swept all 3 podium spots in half of the events. That would be unbelievably epic. Wisconsin is undoubtedly the center of the cheese universe. In other news, the spring elections are being held in less than a week, where statewide voters are going to pick a new Supreme Court justice along with a bunch of other assorted races. I do see a smattering of headlines about how Chris Taylor has outraised and outspent Maria Lazar, but everyone is so burnt out on elections after the past few years that political ads and outreach are a fraction of what they were. Far fewer ads have shown up in my world, and 0 get out the vote canvassers in my Madison neighborhood, where there would have been multiple before at least the past couple of elections. Get a load of this. There have been 112,000 absentee ballots returned as of Monday. In the last spring election, with the insane amount of money that poured into the campaigns for Brad Schimmel and Susan Crawford, there were 258,000 absentee ballots. That's more than double last time compared to now. It is a massive slowdown in an area that the Democrats have dominated, and if Republicans have trouble showing up for spring elections like they have in the past, it'll be interesting to see if and who shows up on Tuesday, because a staggering amount of people don't have the privilege of the freedoms we completely take for granted. In other news, there was a sanity sighting in the Wisconsin court system. Another thing in Wisconsin that we've had enough of is constantly lawsuits about redistricting. Seems like every year or two there's one saying the maps are gerrymandered. This time, the request is for a 3-judge panel to review the maps and make a decision on whether they were gerrymandered. Some smart people, when this happened, were asking how a panel of 3 appeals judges were supposed to overrule the Wisconsin Supreme Court on a ruling that's opposite of how the system works, but let's leave that aside because it's a moot point. The 3-judge panel came out with a decision throwing out the lawsuit and the request. Their statement said that they, quote, do not have the authority to read into a Wisconsin Supreme Court case an analysis that it does not contain, unquote. Funny enough, the maps that were adopted were submitted by Governor Evers and were touted as, quote, fair maps, which would imply they weren't gerrymandered, so the argument now of wanting maps that are less ungerrymandered is something I won't even pretend to understand because I don't think I can. In other news, since the Assembly and Senate have now conducted their business for the rest of the year, it brought out a bunch of frustrated questions and people calling me asking how lawmakers can get away with not working for 8 months that they're getting paid for. So I did some research on how Wisconsin compares to other states. So national observers consider Wisconsin's legislature a full-time light system. While they're in session, lawmakers are expected to devote 80% of their time to lawmaker activities, whether it's in the Capitol or in their districts. Some states like Florida are actually part-time legislatures. Get a load of this. They're expected to be present for 60 days in the beginning of their session to write and approve a budget. These days, they hardly make that deadline anymore, and they have to regularly call special sessions to force everyone to meet and hash things out because they run out of time for all sorts of stuff. And I'm pretty sure they get paid for the extra time when they have to go back. Since they're getting paid $29,000 a year, most folks have to have a different full-time job or own their own company or be retired. Wisconsin is kind of similar where that's the case for a lot of lawmakers. They're either retired from their profession, they juggle owning a family company, or they have a second job that they work maybe one day a week, like Representative Shay Sortwell, that has shared publicly that he drives truck once a day on Fridays to supplement this $60,000 he makes annually as a lawmaker here in Wisconsin. For reference, there are states like California, New York, and Michigan that pay lawmakers over $100,000 per year, and their sessions go from 6 months to a year in length. So I've come to the conclusion that our stupid system is somewhere in the ballpark of all the other stupid systems. Wisconsin is considered as having ample resources for lawmakers compared to other states, between the number of in-office staff that lawmakers can have and some other resources like the Legislative Reference Bureau, which is essentially a department of full-time lawyers on staff for the lawmakers to have at their disposal, and the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, which is the team of on-staff accountants to help the legislature keep track of the state's finances. Back to Florida and Wisconsin systems, seems like, to me, both systems have some weaknesses that could be addressed because from the outside looking in, a couple of things keep happening because it's the way it's always been done, but these days they aren't working as well as they should be. And finally, I give you a quote from an inscription from our nation's repository of knowledge, the Library of Congress. The foundation of every state is the education of its youth. Have a great second half of your weekend, as always. Thanks for listening. The Wisconsin Property Taxpayers Inc. is a nonpartisan membership organization consisting of thousands of small business, farm, and homeowner members in every slowly thawing corner of the state. Founded in 1985, the organization is committed to providing its members with up-to-date information, legislative advocacy, and exclusive cost-saving benefits. Find out how to join at WPTOnline.org/join.